Life is a mosaic of emotions and choices, where the boundaries between good and evil can sometimes intertwine in unpredictable ways. All it takes is a change in family dynamics to trigger emotions we would never have imagined. This is the story of Clara and Lucas, caught up in the torments of everyday life, confronted with a love that defied convention. I am Clara, 42 years old. What I am about to tell may seem vague, even confusing. Life is full of subtleties, and our emotions often escape logic. It all started innocently. Me, an accomplished woman at peace with my life, and my son Lucas, a young man of 20, energetic, passionate, and eager to discover the world. Our relationship, until then harmonious and natural, was about to change in an unimaginable way. Lucas has always held a special place in my heart, present at every significant moment of my life. He symbolized for me a promising future. I had never considered anything other than maternal love for him. However, something shifted. An event shook our bond. In our modest house on the outskirts, surrounded by nature and calm, life seemed ordinary. But behind these walls, an unusual story was taking shape. One day, Lucas came home from university for the holidays. He seemed different. It wasn't just a change in attitude or a more confident posture. A new maturity emanated from him, intriguing and destabilizing me. I still remember that precise day. Sitting at the kitchen table, he revised his lessons while I went about my household chores. I was distracted until his piercing gaze caught my attention. That gaze was no longer that of a child. Surprised, I stopped, my hands still wet. A strange emotion took hold of me. A mixture of worry, curiosity, and an attraction that I refused to acknowledge. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to hide my confusion. "Good," he answered slowly, as if hesitating to add anything else. "I've been thinking a lot about something." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. A palpable tension was building, and I felt a knot in my stomach. His gaze was different, and I didn't know how to interpret it. Trying to maintain a maternal tone, I asked him, "What is it?" But the atmosphere had changed, marked by an unusual distance. Lucas was looking at me intensely, expressing a mixture of desire and need. It reminded me of his childhood, but this time he wasn't looking for comfort. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said abruptly. The words hit me like a shock. I stood there frozen, unable to fully comprehend what he was saying. As I tried to answer, he suddenly leaned in and kissed me. The kiss, though quick and awkward, was charged with emotion. I was paralyzed, unsure of how to react. My heart was pounding. This shattering moment marked a point of no return in our relationship. If you want a rephrasing of the remaining parts, let me know. For a moment, everything inside me was screaming at me to stop, but I remained frozen. When our lips parted, I looked at him, still stunned, my heart pounding. Lucas seemed surprised by his gesture, but his gaze betrayed no regret. It was as if he had expressed something he had kept buried. I, for my part, felt torn, unable to understand what I should do. I knew we had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Yet what I had felt in that moment was real. The next few days were a mix of conflicting emotions. We avoided discussing what had happened, but a lingering tension hung between us. Every glance we exchanged rekindled a troubling spark. One afternoon, as we sat in the living room, he broke the silence. "I can't stop thinking about what happened," he confided. His voice thick with emotion. I felt a weight in my chest. His words resonated with what I was feeling, though I tried to ignore it. "Me neither," I whispered, well aware that acknowledging my own emotions would only make the situation worse. Although I knew it was wrong, a part of me couldn't deny that it felt alive, as if a long-extinguished spark had been rekindled. But I also understood that this situation couldn't last. With a shaky voice, I finally said, "Lucas, what happened was a mistake. This has to stop." I tried to sound firm, but inside I was confused. He looked at me, visibly hurt, and replied, "Why not? I know you feel something for me." His words, though honest, shook me even more. He was right, and it hurt to admit it. My feelings were real, but that didn't mean they were right. From that moment on, our relationship became an emotional battleground. Every encounter, every exchange seemed to exacerbate the inner struggle between what I wanted and what I knew was right. It wasn't just his words or his gaze, but this feeling of being wanted again. It terrified me as much as it attracted me. One night, as we sat side by side watching a movie, I felt his gaze on me. I whispered, almost to myself, "What are we doing?" He answered, his voice full of trouble, "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." I knew that if I didn't end this situation immediately, I never would. But at that moment, I felt as trapped as he did. Our eyes met, reflecting the same internal struggle. Then, as if my barriers had collapsed, I moved closer and kissed him in return. This kiss, more conscious and intense than the last, was loaded with everything I had held back. When we separated, the weight of our actions overwhelmed me. I knew we had crossed an irreversible limit. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling of emptiness. Lucas was there. His gaze a mixture of love and guilt. I knew then that I had to act. Standing up, I looked him straight in the eye and said, "This has to stop. We can't go on." Although he tried to convince me, I didn't give him the chance. "I love you, Lucas, but this isn't fair, not to you or to me." It was the hardest decision I had ever made. I knew it was the right one. Lucas left shortly after. Although his departure was not explicitly discussed, we both knew it was necessary. The silence that followed his absence plunged me into deep reflection. Would you like me to continue with the last parts? The days passed, and a strange calm settled over my life. Lucas had left a void, but also a lesson. What I had felt for him had reminded me of what I had lost in myself. The ability to love and be loved, fully and sincerely. One morning, while I was drinking my coffee, a letter arrived. It bore his handwriting. With apprehension mixed with hope, I opened it. His words were filled with sincerity. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused, but I don't regret what I felt. It showed me that love can exist even in the most unexpected places. I want you to be happy, even if it means we're not together. Thank you for everything, Lucas." Those words brought me both comfort and pain. They confirmed what I already knew. Sometimes love meant letting go. He had taught me not to settle for living half-heartedly, but to embrace what made me tick. However, I knew that the person I had to learn to love again first was myself. In time I found a balance. Lucas would remain a part of me, a bittersweet scar, but not a hindrance. I signed up for a photography class, something I had always wanted to do but had put off. Every image I took reminded me that beauty could be found in imperfection. One day, while I was taking pictures in the park, a man approached, curious about my camera. We talked about light and composition, and then he asked me my name. I smiled, realizing that life continued to offer new encounters and new possibilities. Lucas had been an intense but fleeting flame. He had awakened me to truths about myself. Today, I no longer feel regret, only gratitude for this chapter, as tumultuous as it was. Life is full of stories, and this one prepared me to write the next ones, with a more open heart and a peaceful soul.